the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site covering the Arizona Cardinals. We are recording with Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, the SB Nation, Arizona Cardinals site. Also one of the hosts of the original Draft Breakdown podcast, Seth Cox, and I recording episode 464, which is our Cowboys-Cardinals preview show. We looked back and broke down the sad loss that the Cardinals had to the Giants, and we've turned the page. We're looking ahead to Week 3, a home game against the Dallas Cowboys, and we marked this game as a no chance win a long time ago. Back when the schedule was released, we're like, Week 3, no Kyler Murray? Yeah, definitely not. And guess what? Has anything changed?
No, other than, we're programmed from the time of, the Cardinals came here that they were in the NFC East still, to hate the Cowboys and prey on their misfortune. But you have to feel awful that Trayvon Diggs, the all-pro corner, went down, non-contact injury, gonna probably miss the rest of the season with an ACL. Terrible news for a defense that's allowed 10 points in 2 games. I mean, just that sucks. And that's the only thing. Like, I don't expect it to be anything. I don't think it's gonna matter. But at the end of the day, that's one of their guys, right? And could they come in hungover from, because that's a massive loss. That's the only kind of hope I think that this team has, is that they come in a little hungover from the shock of one of their main guys going down in practice, and the Cardinals are able to cover the huge spread. Because outside of that, I just don't.
Best case scenario, they cover the spread.
Right, like a 20. They end up losing like 21 to 13. Right, like it just seems so far fetched that the Cardinals win this game, especially after how they fell apart in the second half against a New York Giants team that looked woeful once again against the San Francisco 49ers tonight.
Yeah. So, we want to talk about in this first part of the show kind of what are the Cowboys, what do they do, what do they offer, what are the challenges. We'll look ahead, kind of the keys, like keys to victory or keys to not being demolished / matchups to watch. And then we'll wrap up the show with picks and predictions. And as well, we've got our favorite prop bets for this game, which I think this will be a standard thing moving forward. Betting content is king these days. I mean, I do,
and to be frank, we're really good at it. So you should just listen to us.
I'm 6-0 on my underdog picks so far for Sportsbook Wire. I hit 3 out of 4 of the props last week.
Yeah, I'm 4 of 6, but we're way plus money after last weekend with a massive day. Thanks to Matt Prater and and Daniel Jones throwing interceptions.
Yep, for sure. So let's look at the Dallas Cowboys to start out. What we know about them is that in 2 games they defeated their opponents 70-10. But we do need to take that plus 60-point differential with a grain of salt because of whom they were playing. They were playing a Giants team that out of, like, if you want to look at through 12 quarters, have been bad for 10 of them. Then you had the Jets that were starting Zach Wilson instead of Aaron Rodgers. And so their defense has been dominant, but they technically haven't played anybody yet. They've got to win over the Giants, they've got to win over the Jets, and now they're playing the the woeful Cardinals that nobody believes in. And we believe, like last week, first half, that's the ceiling of their – that was the absolute ceiling that they have, and that was against a bad team.
Yeah, that's the ceiling without Kyler Murray. And I talked to Dave Halprin of SB Nation. I mean, Dave has been covering or blogging the boys since you were running Revenge of the Birds.
Yeah, so this is dating back to like pre-2010.
Yeah, so he's been there forever, and it was an interesting conversation because that was kind of my question. Is like you're 2-0, and neither game was really entertaining or close. And obviously, in the NFL, you never take any win for granted. But at what point do you, as a fan, go, okay, stacking up these wins against, pretenders is nice, or not even pretenders, just bad teams is nice. But they said, as fans, we have week 5 circled. That's when they face the San Francisco 49ers. That's when it's actually going to matter, right? Like that's when it'll become real. Like, are they a legitimate contender, or are they able to feast on, the also rans of the NFL, a bad Giants team, a downtrodden New York Jets team post, Aaron Rodgers injury, and then obviously the Arizona Cardinals. And I think the week after that, they don't play anybody good either, if I'm remembering correctly, because, and that's not we talked about it with the Cardinals. We don't make the schedule. We have nothing to do with it. You can only play the teams that are in front of you. But yeah, they play the New England Patriots, who more than likely are
meh game.
Yeah, are going to be bad as well. And so they're looking forward to October 8th with the idea that, like, hey, they're taking care of business, and it looks really good so far. I mean, you talked about it, 40-0, 30-10. Impressive displays in both games where they just looked, quite frankly, head and shoulders above the Giants and the Jets. And now they get a Cardinals team that, for all accounts and purposes, is considered the worst team in the NFL.
You look at they are number 1 in yards allowed, 193 per game. They are number 1 in pass defense. Let's pull that up, allowing 107 a game. They obviously are number 1 in points allowed, having allowed 10 in 2 games. So that is a whopping 5.0 points per game allowed. They are number 1 in sacks. Will enter the week number 1 in sacks with 10. And then they continue, I think, 7 takeaways? 7 takeaways through 2 games, I think. How many did they have? They took the ball 3 times against.
Let me see. Yeah, 7. So they have 3 against the Giants and 4 against. Now, let me ask you this: does that 3 include the blocked field goal return for a touchdown?
I don't think so.
So I mean, they also have that in
yeah, and they've got a defensive score, a special team score. They haven't had to do anything on offense. Literally.
No, and their kicker's been great, who they brought in from the USFL via being a soccer player, I think is what he was, and they've got just one of the 3. I mean, is that overstepping 3 best defensive players in the NFL, and Micah Parsons,
yeah,
the 24-year-old freak of nature.
Well, you look at the defensive unit as a whole, and Dan Quinn has been, I believe, the last 2 years they've led the league in takeaways, and they continue to do that. That's a hard statistic to replicate year to year, because turnovers they're fluky in many ways. But they continue to take the ball away. This defense under Dan Quinn is great. And it's been part because, one, you've got an elite pass rusher in Micah Parsons. You've got great back end play by Trayvon Diggs, which takes a hit. And then you've got Adijazua is not with Cowboys
Yes,
won. Oh,
Osa Digazua, yeah, he's got 3 sacks.
I loved him coming out of UCLA. And
yeah, and he's been fantastic, and he's really stepping up this year. He's becoming a menace. His career high was 4 sacks. He's got 3 in 2 games. I mean, and that's not to take anything away from him, but that's the Micah Parsons effect, right? Like Micah Parsons requires so much attention that it's hard to ignore. And then you look at it, obviously they lost Trayvon Diggs, and that loss cannot be overstated against a team like the 49ers. That's going to play a huge factor in things. But they have Stephon Gilmore, Malik Hooker, Jaron Kearse, who are 3 fantastic defensive backs still, who, let's be honest, that's more than enough to deal with a team like the Arizona Cardinals.
Yes.
They added Dante Fowler as an extra pass rusher. He's been really good through his couple games here, in limited playing time. And so that's just what they've been able to do this season. And then you just look at the fact that they've got, a guy in Leighton Vander Esch who is a Pro Bowl, borderline all-pro linebacker when healthy. And that's always been the caveat with him, is it not? Like, if he can stay on the field, he is a true difference maker, but it's that if is huge every single year. And this year, again, you never want to root for injuries, so you just hope he can do it and find a way to stay on the field and stay healthy, because he makes that defense, what it is. Micah Parsons is 100% the best player on that defense, but in the end, Leighton Vander Esch is the leader of that defense.
Yeah, this is and talent in the skill position is still there. Tony Pollard at running back, granted, as a number 1, honestly unproven. So they are leaning on a guy that hasn't done it with a huge workload yet. But you've also got CeeDee Lamb, fantastic. Brandon Cooks, who, watch out, like in his first year with every team, really, really good. Michael Gallup, a very good 2-3 player. And then that offensive line continues to be very talented. Now, granted, in this particular matchup, they do have some injury concerns. Zach Martin hasn't practiced this week. Their center, however you pronounce it, Biadasz. Biadasz, he injured his hamstring on Thursday, and it could be in danger for the game this week, and so they could be down a couple of starters on the offensive line. Luckily for them, the Cardinals have lost their 2 most talented and their 2 most talented defensive linemen for probably the season in Carlos Watkins and LJ Collier. So that
it's interesting that we haven't heard anything on Collier, but we've heard that Watkins has already undergone surgery and is likely done for the season, right? Like, so are they just kind of treading water and hoping that Collier can come back? Like, it's just an interesting aside. And you look at their offense, and that's another thing that Dave brought up, is that their offense isn't efficient right now. I mean, you mentioned it. Tony Pollard's averaging 3.6. I mean, James Conner's averaging a full yard per carry more than Tony Pollard right now. Rico Dowdell has not been good as the backup. Deuce Vaughn in limited snaps is averaging less than 3 yards a carry. Dak doesn't present the running prospect that he used to with the just awful leg injury that he suffered a couple years ago, right? Or what was that, 2020?
Yeah, that ankle. That was so bad.
One of the worst, most gruesome injuries you can remember. So you just look at it and you see that this is a guy that, this is an offense with a lot of potential, but like you said, they haven't needed it. I mean, when you're running away with games like they have, it's just, and that's what Dave said, like, it hasn't been necessary. So at the same time,
they haven't been tested at all. They have been the big bad bully Cowboys. They've been punching everybody in the mouth and haven't taken a hit yet. They're probably not going to take a hit this week with the Cardinals.
No, and he said, that's one of the things Dave said is like, because I tongue in cheek, sort of maybe, but realistically, I asked, like the over under on this game is 43.5. That seems really like, aren't the Cowboys going to put up 35 points? And he's like, no, because, they're averaging 35, but like you said, you got to take that Jets game or the Giants game with a grain of salt, because most of that came outside of the offense. And so, he's like, the reality is when they get up, they don't put their foot on the gas. They go, hey, defense, go have fun. And like, we're just not going to screw it up. Like, we're not going to create any negative plays. So the way the Cardinals played in the second half of last week is how the Cowboys play. The difference is the Cowboys have a defense to back that up, where the Cardinals do not.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, this is a matchup that is very difficult. So coming up next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talking. Let's move on and talk about the matchups we're looking at, as well as the keys to, like, normally we would say keys to victory, but this is keys to non-embarrassment. I think that's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise of C-Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web, talking about Cardinals-Cowboys. Seth Cox with me, as he is twice a week now during the regular season. Matchups and keys to the game. I think we're going to have to do, like, it's even a stretch just to call them keys to victory. It's keys to non-embarrassment. And it comes down to, like, we're going to start with turnovers. One, they can't turn the ball over, and two, they have to take the ball away from the Cowboys somehow.
Yeah, they got to figure out a way to create negative plays for the Cowboys, and something that they haven't done this year. I mean, you look at it through 2 games, their offense has 0 turnovers. Their defense has 7. They're +7 in the turnover. Like, that's really hard to beat, right? So where the Cowboys have struggled this year, when you look at it, their red zone offense is not good. They're 21st in red zone offense, 5 of 10. So if the Cardinals, because they do move the ball so efficiently and well, I mean, they're 4th in third down conversion. They do a good job, in that case. So can the Cardinals be a bend but don't break defense? They were that against Washington, and then they were not that in the second half against New York, right? Like, so can they do that this week and continue to that trend where they're a 50% red zone team, which is, again, 21st in the NFL? Not great. So that's a huge thing. Like you said, can they create negative plays? We talked a little bit about it. They don't run the ball well, but they'll just run the ball. I mean, they rushed for 122 yards in the first game and 134 yards in the second game. Those are big numbers.
Those are volume carries.
But you look at it, they're 8th in yards and 23rd in yards per attempt. It's not good. It's not pretty.
Mark McCarthy really likes this, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean,
Pete Carroll is dreaming of an offense like this, I think, with that defense.
They really are. And you look at it, the thing that they do is they own the clock, man. They really do. And a lot of that is the fact that they just, they take up, they don't care. They'll gain 3 yards a carry. They don't care. And so, they're fantastic on third down. So they make plays when they need to. And they don't turn the ball over. I mean, they're first, obviously, with no turnovers in the NFL, and they're first in creating turnovers. So when you have that massive, juxtaposition, and you don't turn the ball over, and then you force turnovers, yeah, you're a really tough team to beat. They haven't done anything particularly well offensively this year, except the fact that, like you said, they have weapons everywhere. CeeDee Lamb is, a top 10 receiver in the NFL, maybe even a top 5 receiver in the NFL. He's, putting up the yards, 220 yards in 2 games. He has 0 touchdowns. In fact, they have 2 touchdowns passing. They have one to Luke Schoonamaker and one to Jake Ferguson. So all those weapons we talked about, Tony Pollard, Brandon Cooks, Kavonte Turpin, like
They're
all those
saving
guys.
him. They're saving
Yeah,
him for the big
they're
games.
they're just waiting for the Cardinals, right? So they can just throw the ball all over. And what they do is they just do a really nice job of just putting themselves in a position to be successful, and that's hard to defend. I mean, you look at it, Dak's completing 71% of his passes for just under 400 yards. I mean, he's not even throwing for 200 yards a game, and they're averaging 70 points a game, or 35 points a game. Yeah, 70 in 2 games. Like, that's just absurd with what they're doing. And the other thing is they don't, like, there's no negative plays. You look at it, 1 sack on the season. They've given up 1 sack. Like, so not only do they not turn the ball over, they don't allow negative plays to happen. So, like, the negative plays that happen are like 2-yard runs. Like, those are the negative plays.
That's such a good running game.
Right. And so
it's not an exciting running game. But it's a great running game.
And then, like I said, their kicker has been just completely lights out. He's 7 for 7 on field goals. He's 5 of 6 on extra points. He's doing a great job kicking the ball. And when you're not able to score touchdowns consistently, but you are able to score points, that makes it really tough with that defense, because that's the thing. 4 turnovers last game. That's a insane stat. Like, I don't think people realize how uncommon it is to have 4 turnovers in a game, or create 4 turnovers in a game. They had 3 sacks. Micah Parsons had 2. Osa Odighizuwa had 1. Their defense is relentless, and it's fast, it's physical, and it's nasty, and it's everything that we're hoping that Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis get to create without it being there yet. It's what they want to do, but can they do it?
And I look at offensively, the key for me, honestly, isn't the run game. They have to find explosive plays on the passing game. They will not be successful leaning on James Conner this game. It just will not happen. They need effective running, but they need plays in the pass game. They need Josh Dobbs to be what he's never been.
No, and the biggest thing is that Dobbs has to be efficient and explosive. Like, they have to stay on the field. And so what he did in the first half is what he has to do for 4 quarters. He can't become Josh Dobbs 3 and out, right? It has to be.
He can't be Josh Rosen, which is
right.
What Josh Rosen is what he was for 6 quarters.
And so if that's not happening, it makes it really difficult. I assume, and I haven't, paid enough attention to how they do things, because when you have 2 cornerback ones, I don't necessarily know if you follow or if you just leave a guy on one side. So, I'll be interested to see if Stephon Gilmore shadows Marquise Brown around, or if they put him, just on one side and let him dictate that one side of things. Obviously, like I said, that Trevon Diggs thing is a huge deal. It's just, unfortunately, I don't think the Cardinals have enough talent to take advantage of it. And they have so much talent, the Cowboys do, on defense, that against a team like they'll face in the first 4 weeks, it really doesn't matter.
Matchups. I think matchup number 1 for me is Micah versus Paris Johnson, even though we know very well that part of the reason why Micah's so good is because they put him literally everywhere. His size, his positional flexibility, he can blitz from the stack, he can go off the ball, and he can win. He can win one-on-one against good tackles, but I do want to see how Paris holds up on those one-on-ones against Micah.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting. And it's one of those things that you can glean a lot from this game in a positive way. You just have to go in with the right mentality. And you and I got a compliment on the podcast earlier this week about that reality that we tried to inject into this discussion and the situation. And so you have to go in with this ideal of like, this is a game that they're not supposed to win. They're just flat out not supposed to win. And quite frankly, they're not even really supposed to compete, right? Like they're just that much overmatched. But there are individual things we can look at. How does Paris Johnson look, right? Let's be honest, DJ Humphries hasn't been great since his return. Is he going to be able to be counted on over the next year, or is this kind of the farewell tour of DJ? That's something to watch. On the flip side, how does Zaven look against two of the better tackles in the NFL? Those will be things to watch. He had his first sack as a true edge guy this year, right? So
sack. It was a half sack.
Yeah. So everybody's favorite. But so you look at those things and how does he do? How does Kaiser White do, continuing to kind of take over the role of leader on the defense, especially now with Budda Baker gone, so all
Marco
of that
and
is
CD. Marco was bad last week, and
Marco, I went back and I watched, and I try never to make be hyperbolic in anything. Like I want to really kind of look at things and see what I see. That was probably Marco Wilson's worst game as a pro, including his rookie year. Like he was.
The first half wasn't bad, but the second half, it was starting with that bomb to Jalen Hyatt.
He just seemed like he was out of position on almost every, and it's interesting because I'm learning a lot as the father of a kid who plays cornerback now. And so I go to all of his training and I talk to his defensive coordinators and I talk to people about what assignment should be. So now I'm, and I still don't know nearly as much as anybody that plays the position or is, a coach in that situation, but I'm learning more. And so when I'm seeing what Marco did once the all 22 got released, I'm like, holy cow, this guy was awful this week. And it's tough because in a situation where you have a fifth or sixth round rookie as the other starter, you're without your best defensive back without question in Budda Baker. So you're forced to play Kayvon Wallace and Andre Chaucer, and you're asking Jalen Thompson to kind of become that nickel back, right? All of a sudden your guy that is your quote unquote corner one having that bad of a game, becomes an issue because you don't have the talent to make up for it. And then, like you said, now you get a guy that just put up a massive game. And a lot of people wanted to get frisky and say that he did it against Sauce Gardner. Well, he didn't, but he had a great game still. I think he ended up with 100 and some odd yards, 143 yards in the game. Again, it's crazy he doesn't have a touchdown. How do you have 143 yards on 11 catches and no touchdowns? That's just a baffling. But like he is putting on a show. He's going to give Marco Wilson fits, and quite frankly, he's got to figure out if he can be a guy that can be a true corner one, or if this is a guy that is going to be, I don't want to say next on the chopping block, but a guy that they have to upgrade from over the next couple years for this defense to be where Gannon and Rallis want it.
What other?
I think Kaiser, Is Woods playing, or is it going to be Barnes again?
It looks like Barnes because Woods missed Wednesday and Thursday practice, so I'm guessing it'll be Barnes.
So I mean, Kaiser and Barnes and Wallace and Chassier, and whoever gets the time along the front three, can they continue to make this Dallas Cowboys rushing attack not efficient? Because that's the last thing that can happen in this game, is that the Cowboys rushing attack gets going, right? Like if the Cowboys rushing attack, all of a sudden those 140 yards a game they're averaging are not on 30 carries, but instead on 20 carries, it's going to be a long day for everybody. Like Jess is going to be beating his head on the desk up at State Farm Stadium. Like, what are we doing, guys? Just like stick your arm out, please. Just try to make a tackle.
No, I don't know if they could try to stick their arms out. They'll tear up
I know.
biceps.
I don't know if they should. I don't know if they should anymore. Right? Like, what is going on? How do you lose 2 defensive linemen to bicep tears? Like that's. But yeah, I mean,
Cardinals had that. There was a 1 year, 2017, when they had like 3 broken wrists, and it was like, why? I don't understand. Like,
I wanted to ask you something because it came out after we talked, and this is slightly off topic, but not. What did you make of Buddha's Instagram post?
To be honest, I haven't seen it.
It basically said all things happen for a reason. And so people are like, is he actually going to be done for the year? Like, is the hamstring that bad? Like,
I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but man, these guys all put things out like high school girls a lot. Like that's just the reality of it. It's not. We're just fuddy-duddies now. We are. we're grumpy old men on our couch telling people to get off our lawns because we don't like cryptic messages on social media
are just weird.
It's like why? Like if you want to say something, say it.
Right.
If you don't want to say it, then don't.
Well, and I get it. Like if they're trying to save face for a couple of weeks before they announce that he's done for the year or something, like that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, I was just curious, but yeah, it's just interesting that you've got, when we talked about it, like the depth was always a concern. And we knew that even the starters weren't probably NFL caliber starters. They were really, really good NFL depth with questions if they were NFL caliber starters. And then we saw that against, at least Washington and New York, that they're more than capable starters in the NFL. But man, the fall off was quick. And I just don't know if they can continue to keep that Cowboys run game inefficient, because I don't know. I think that Rallis does a good enough job scheming up pressure packages to manufacture 2 or 3 sacks in a game. He's done it both games. I mean, they had 6 the first game, 3 last game. He can do that. I just don't know if they can stay stout enough up front. And that's really, to me, where it's so cliche, right? It's one in the trenches, like, but when you're down to Jonathan Ledbetter and then guys that you either cut or just signed off the street, like, or Dante Stills, who you probably didn't want to play this year, or at least this early this year, like, it just makes it really difficult.
Yeah. Coming up next on the Rise Up Series podcast, Mr. Cardinals talking about. Let's move on. Picks, predictions, and some betting picks, some props and stuff like that. That's coming up next on Rise Up Sea Red. We're back on the Rise Up Sea Red podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. Moving on, let's make our picks and predictions. Best case, Seth, you already said it. like the best case scenario is kind of like a 28 or like a 28-23 win, and that's if they play out of their mind. The Cowboys don't have two of their starting offensive linemen, and the Cardinals force a couple of turnovers, and even picking that. But 12.5 points. The Cardinals are 12.5 point underdogs. Do you think that there's even a chance that the cover? Because I look at what the Cowboys have done so far against competition similar to the Cardinals, and I say there's just no way, especially with the confidence that we had in the defense. I lost when they gave up 31 points in the second half last week.
Well, like we said, like at the end of the day, the game is about the players, and the question about tanking came in, and it's always like, are they tanking because they're playing really hard and to be tanking? It's like they were never tanking.
No, tanking only happens from the front office because a coach cannot actively try to lose games because they will, especially a coach like, again, a brand new. So you can do that with a lame duck head coach.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
You can't do it with a brand new head coach who's preaching competition. He would lose that locker room immediately if there was any evidence that they're not trying actively to win games.
Right. Why even fire Cliff and Kime if you're going to tank?
Exactly.
Just keep them. Like but the reality was that, and you mentioned the front office. I don't think this was an active tank by Monty. It was just a situation where he had to fix the cap. He had to, which meant that they were going to have to go cheap this year when they needed 1 billion positions filled, including the quarterback position. And so it was going to be difficult. And so now that starters are dropping like flies, all of a sudden it's like, and so you look at it, I don't see a scenario that they are in this game where they cover the 12 and a half, whatever line you're getting right now.
Yeah.
It looks like it's back up to 12 and a half too.
Yeah.
So
there's several games like this. There are some really, really lopsided matchups. The first one was the 49ers game against the Giants. And I was telling you, I don't love big spreads like that. But the particular matchups, like 49ers Giants, they're going to cover. You've got Jaguars,
Houston.
Texans. They're going to, because Texans are Seattle, Carolina. Oh my God, Kansas City Bears. I'm like, as tough as it's been for the Chiefs so far, they will find no resistance from the Bears at all.
No, now they've got something going on in their, in the house, and it's just weird situations. So yeah, I don't see it. So it becomes more about the props again for us, right? Like it becomes more like, all right, we're going to take the Cowboys on the money line. There's no juice on that. You got $650 to win 100. It's never worth it. Like as much as you think like, hey, I'll take out,
it only works
20.
It only works if you put it in a parlay. And it's,
and even then it's like, if you're like, oh, I'll take out 2,600 and win 400, so I'll have $3,000. It's like, that's the time that Dak, steps wrong and refractures the ankle. And then Micah Parsons gets kicked out for a late hit. And then all of a sudden, you're staring at, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose $2,600. Right. So, you look at it, you like the spread, you like the 12 and a half, you think they cover that. Let me ask you this, the over 43, that's a really interesting one, because from Halprin to us, like nobody's really confident in that number. Nobody's confident in getting over 43 because everybody feels like the Cowboys are going to do just enough to get ahead. And the question is, how much will they push it? And two, how much will the Cardinals be able to do against that defense? Like if they're not able to get early success, we've seen that success in the second half is nearly impossible. So that becomes the question, is like, what are they able to do early in order to keep this game close?
Yeah, I have the final score for this game pegged at 34-13.
So you're over
Yeah,
43,
yes.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, would that be one? Like, I wouldn't mess with that line.
I
would.
don't know because because of the fact that they have completely shut down. So that banks on, you can't bet on a 40-point performance by a team. You can bet on in early 30s, right? You can, like, low 30s, you can say they're going to score that. But then you need the other team to hit double digits. And with how Dallas is playing and how the Cardinals offense has looked for, honestly, 6 quarters of the 8, you're like, I don't know. But I think they'll have the river, but I would not personally bet it.
Well, the interesting thing is it's moved because it was 43.5 on Tuesday and it's down to 43 on Thursday. So I know that's just a half point.
All that does is create a push scenario.
It does, but that means the money was on the under to move that down. So one of the ones I really like, I talked a little bit about it off the air, that, it seems risky, but I like it. And that's Matt Prater over 4.5 points. That's 2 field goals. I don't know if the Cardinals are going to score a touchdown. In your scenario, 13, that's 7 points. So that's an easy hit. The juice isn't great, meaning you have to, in this scenario, you would have to bet $125 to win $100. So that may not be as juicy as last week, where we had the same line and it was plus money for Prater. So, if you're wanting something as close to surefire, that's close to even money, that's one that I like.
I like. So here's my big money one, and you can go and you can hedge on this because both are such high plus odds. And that's if you look at the total margin, including overtime. And 2 that I really like you could look at individually. One is, and I like this one the best, and it's Cowboys by 19-24. I've got them winning by like 21. That's plus 525. And that feels like a sweet spot. You could also take a look at Cowboys 13-18, and that is plus 340. Now, if you're a little risk averse, because they're both such, like, if you were to do bets on each, you still end up with plus odds on, like, if you could decide to place bets on both.
So I do things like this all the time. So what were the numbers again?
Plus 340 and plus 525.
All right. So the way you do this, and
so it could be plus 170 if you win the 1, or plus 262, something like that.
Yeah. So the way I typically do it is, like, if you want to, and you're doing lower denominations, but in this situation, I would put $10 on the plus 3, whatever the number was, and then $5 on the plus 5. So you're close to about the same amount, or $750 on the plus 5. So you're basically you're guaranteed to make money no matter what, and you're hedging.
Assuming they win by at least 13.
Right. I mean, yes, as long as they win.
But that would be covering the spread to begin with, which we say they're going to do, right?
Right. And we were talking about it. One of the ones I really like, so Jess represents BetMGM. I'm representing DraftKings. Go to either one, doesn't matter to us. If Jess has a code on his site, go to Jess's. If he doesn't, use DraftKings.
So basically, if you are on Revenge of the Birds, hit those links for DraftKings. If you're come to CardsWire and you see the links for the BetMGM, go that way. It just makes sense.
But on DraftKings, they have the total point bands, and I really like that this week for the Cowboys, because I think that 31-40 band at plus 235 is the sweet spot. I have a really hard time even seeing them scoring only 30 points. Because as Jess has pointed out multiple times on this podcast in the last 2 episodes, the New York Giants scored 31 points in the second half. Like, you could even throw a little, because so that's plus 235. So you could even, my buddy calls it small fries. You can even go a little small fries on 41-50. That means the amount of points they score in the game, and that's plus 800. So that's a massive like number. But I really like that 31-40 at plus 235. It's a juicy line there, because 21 to like, I could see them settling on 30, but I just feel like there's no way that they only score 30. And so then the other bet I would make on that, and Jess said, he's got it 34-13. The other bet I would make is the Cowboys team touchdown total is 3.5. Team touchdown total means touchdowns scored on offense, defense, or special teams. That's 4 touchdowns. Jess has them scoring 4 and 2 field goals. Like, that's plus 135. That just seems that
well, look at the Giants did it in the second half.
Right. It just seems like they're begging to lose money this week on underestimating the Cowboys offense, because it has been so laissez-faire through the first 2 games. They're like, oh, we're scoring this much. Oh, okay. We can pull back. So it's like, I just don't know what resistance the Cardinals defense can give. So we've given a lot of potentially negative Cardinals stuff. So I have one more. Okay, go ahead.
And it's not a great, honestly, they're not great line, but I think it's an easy win. It's Joshua Dobbs over half an interception at minus 150.
Yeah, I like that one too. I was going to go.
I think it's just easy money. It's not profitable, but it's easy money because he hasn't turned the ball over. Like, he hasn't thrown an interception, but they have 5 interceptions in 2 games, the Cowboys do.
And the one I like with Dobbs is I like his over 13.5 rushing yards. It's their pass rush. It feels like he's going to have to run a couple times. I think he gets there probably in the first half, to be quite honest with you, because I think he's going to be running for his poor life. So the other one I was interested, and I wanted to get your opinion in, Tony Pollard over 69.5. We talked about how unpotent the running game has been for the Cowboys, but they have not faced the front like the Cardinals. And I don't mean that in a positive way. Collier, Watkins are healthy. They're coming off that game. I'm probably okay with that. He's ran for 142 yards on the season. Like I said, he's averaging 3.6 yards per carry. It's not been good. But 70 and 72 yards, a lot of grinded out stuff. I feel like 69.5 is really low, man. Like, unless they just don't play him that much, I just don't see how he doesn't get there. I mean, he ran the ball 25 times last week in that win over the Jets. Yeah. Like, it just seems really low.
And for me, the one that seems like really low that I think is going to be an easy one to get is, especially since the way the Cardinals rely on the passing game on the tight ends, and the fact that, Dobbs has had Ertz twice. The over-under for Ertz is only 31.5 yards. I'm taking that over it, and it's a minus 110, so it's basically right there. So, but minus 110 for over, I think it's easy. That's just easy because,
And if you want a little more juice on that, parlay it with his over 3.5 receptions. Jess and I joked about it, but I mean, he's on the Larry Fitzgerald plan, so he'll have 5 catches for 35 yards. Like, that's gonna be what he does, jokingly, but it'll probably be closer to like 5 for 45 in this game. Like, that just seems, I'm with you, that just seems like easy money. The over 3.5 is not good though. It's minus 166. So like,
so that's you need to parlay that one to.
So yeah, if you can parlay those two together, if that's an option on your book, that's a good one to do, because I feel like it'll give you some positive money. And no bet is safe, but like it feels safe-ish.
Yeah. Let me see. If we want to look at a fun one, let's go CeeDee Lamb, longest reception, over 24.5 at minus 110. They've got one big play, right? They've got at least one big pass play in there.
Yeah, you really think so, wouldn't you?
It's just, we've seen that. We saw it both weeks. They gave up some explosive passing plays.
Yeah, and so you look at it from that perspective. I'm looking at other ones, see if there's anything else. 24.5. I like that. Ertz is 14.5. I don't know if I'd take that, man. that might be too long.
He would have had it both weeks. He would have had it both weeks.
No, he does. He catches usually one for about 17 to 18, and then most of the other stuff's like 6, right? Like that's what he's been doing for the most part. And I'm looking at these. The other one that's interesting, but you brought up a great point off the show. Connor's rushing attempts is 14.5. I think they'd like to get him more than that, and it's close to even money. It's minus 105. I just don't know if they're going to have the opportunity.
Right. Like
14 and a half carries.
Right. So if you look at passing attempts, they don't even, for BetMGM doesn't even have one for Josh Dobbs. So
let me see if mine does. I think it does. Yeah. No, it doesn't for Dobbs either. It has completions at 19.5. And Jess informed me before the show, he's at 21 in both games. So,
and the way because he's a check down king. So I think honestly over 19.5, I think that's easy, especially if they're going to have to pass the ball.
Yeah, the only thing we worried about, and if you can find a book that has it, will Clayton Tune throw a pass?
Yes.
That's a legitimate. If you can find a book that has a prop like that, I would, because I mean, there's crazy stuff. Like they have one on DraftKings that's either team to score 3 unanswered times, and that's minus 265. Yes. And let's just be honest, they're not thinking the Cardinals are doing that. Right. Another interesting one on DraftKings, special or defensive team touchdown scored, plus 215 for yes. That's not a bad one, man. That's really not a bad one. So you just look at those ones. There's some really interesting ones, but yeah, it is heavily. I mean, when you can't even get passing attempts on a quarterback because they're like, I don't know, they'll probably have to throw the ball 45 times. Like, it's bad. When 14.5 is almost even money on rushing attempts for their lead back, or for the Cardinals lead back, like the books are like, they're going to be throwing the ball. I'm not setting anything. Like there's no way I'm giving these guys this chance. So, it's a difficult season. It's a difficult situation. Jess and I joke a lot about it. That's how we get through it. Let's be honest. It's one of the easier ways to do it.
Laugh so you don't cry, man. Laugh so you don't cry.
But, like I said, seeing Paris Johnson, seeing if the defense can hold up against the run, and winning a little bit of money, that can make this game interesting and worth watching for everybody.
And with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm tried to have a Cowboys preview with the Cowboys guy. My man, Katie Drummond, is on vacation. I haven't heard about his contributor. There was another podcast possibility from one of the other networks that fell through. So this might be it. So hopefully it will be. Hopefully I'll have a show for you on Saturday. If not, Seth and I will be recording again Tuesday night to talk about the debacle that it likely will be. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. This is the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise Up Red Sea, Be Red Sea Red, and of course, Rise Up C-Red.